What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Filling Your Cup. I'm your boy, Calvin.
And I'm your other host, David.
Well, and today we're going to talk about what are the different types of trust, and do you need one? All right, so the two types of trust that we're going to talk about today are the revocable trust and the irrevocable trust. So a revocable trust and living trust are two separate terms that mean the same thing. It means a trust that can be that you could change the terms to at any time. And an irrevocable trust means you cannot modify it after it's been created without the consent of the beneficiaries. So one you could change, and one you can't change without consent.
Okay. So why set up a trust? By setting up a trust, you save 2 to 4% of your estate due to attorney fees and court costs. Trust is easier to set up. You don't need an attorney to set it up. You can do it yourselves. So you do save a lot of money just by setting up a trust. Your executor will still be responsible for sorting out the estate, which could take up to 6 to 18 months, depending on the intricacies. And so imagine like there's a death in the family, and instead of mourning your family death, you have to go travel back and forth to the to the courthouse to try to settle all these family matters, right? Splitting up the assets, and whatnot. If you don't have like a will or a trust beforehand, so it saves a lot of headaches, saves a lot of relationships in the family. So it's good to just have one in general. It's just good to be prepared.
All right, so furthermore, reasons to use a revocable trust is to avoid the probate. So probate is the court supervised process of transferring assets from a descendant's ownership into the names of these beneficiary. It's required when someone dies, leaving a will, or even if they leave a will, because the property has no other ways of passing it to the other to a living individual. A revocable living trust doesn't require probate because the trust owns the assets and the trust hasn't died. It's a private contract between you and the trust maker or the grantor and the trust entity. In most cases, grantor serves as the trustee of his own revocable living trust, managing the property placed within it during its lifetime. Successors trustee can be named to step in and take over management of the trust when the grantor dies, selling it and distributing its property to its beneficiaries named in the trust documents. So basically, avoid all the courts and will arguing and time to obtain what should be yours from your family members who died by just having a trust. This makes things more simple.
Yeah, and a lot of people they create a trust and they put their assets in it and they just make themselves the trustee so they can manage the trust. Just so that's kind of like a loophole that people uses for when they use like a revocable trust. So secondly, so planning for mental disability, right? The biggest use for a revocable trust is if something happens to you and you become incapacitated, right? You no longer have the ability or mental fortitude to make decisions on your behalf, right? So that's where a lot of people they see the revocable trust as being really useful, right? Because a revocable trust, the advantage of it having over a will is that it can prepare your estate in the event you become incapacitated, not just when you die. Your successor or trustee can also step in if you become mentally incompetent to the point where you can no longer handle your own affairs. Your trust document can specify how it should be determined that you are indeed mentally incompetent, such as by certification by your own physician or by like a team of doctors who all must agree. Your property will not be transferred to the beneficiaries at this time, as if you were to be, as if you were dead. But your trustee will simply manage your finances and properties because you're unable to do so. A will cannot provide this eventuality. Your loved one will have to go to the court to get someone appointed as your guardian or your conservator to manage your affairs if you don't have a revocable living trust. So this is like the biggest selling point of a revocable trust, right? Is planning, is what happens to your assets when you're no longer able to manage it yourself. And a will cannot do this for you, because a will is kind of something after you pass away, then it steps in. But this, as with a revocable trust, if you become like a vegetable, knock on wood, someone else can manage your affairs, and you don't have to worry about that anymore. So that's like a really big what's that phrase? It's like a heavy weight lifted off your back, so you don't have to worry about that. And so this is like the biggest selling point of revocable trust. And also maintaining your privacy. A will becomes a matter of public record when it's submitted to the court to open probate. Anyone can stop by the courthouse and read it, and they'll know what you own and like what assets you have and who you left it to. No one beside your beneficiaries, in some states your heirs, regardless of whether they are a beneficiary of the trust, are entitled to see your trust documents. So only a very few selected people can see what's in the trust. The only time it might become a public record is if if there's a lawsuit and someone in your family challenge the validity of your trust, and they don't believe that they left everything to your older brother. They go to court, and so that's what happens. So sometimes that's why, like, in your trust you have so much control of what gets dedicated to where. So like you just so much control of it that you can like list out, hey, this person get this when this happens, this person get this when this happens, and if this happens, this person get this. So you can list out all these instructions, and that's like the really good good thing about trust, because you have so much control of where the assets go, and normally there's not too much infighting.
All right, so irrevocable trust. Irrevocable trusts are commonly used to remove the value of property from a person's estate so that property can't be taxed when the person dies. Federal estate tax exemption is $11.58 million. Exemption will continue to go up to be adjusted upward based on inflation. The list of taxes that the deceased person may owe and the type of tax return that will need to be filed are stated below. So the individual who transfers assets into an irrevocable trust permanently gives those assets to the trustee and to the beneficiaries of the trust. Because they no longer own the assets, they don't comprise or contribute to the value of the estate. So basically, any money after the 11.58 million is subject to tax. If you have that type of wealth, you should put it in an irrevocable trust, so that trust don't count towards their assets, and they don't have to pay taxes on the trust. It's again another loophole or another way to save money. Yep.
All right, and another pros of an irrevocable trust is the government assistance piece. So because you're effectively giving away your property for all time, its value can no longer be counted against you for purpose of qualifying for government programs in the time of need. For example, eligibility for Medicaid is restricted to those with eligible assets and income. So the calculations to see who qualifies for Medicaid is pretty complicated. But then it basically look at all your total assets, and if you make too much money or you have too much wealth, then you don't qualify for Medicaid, right? So normally your primary residence doesn't get count towards the to the collective pool. But But then like if you own like investment properties and whatnot, those get counted towards your total income. And if your income is too high, then you don't qualify for Medicaid. And a lot of people, they do want to qualify for Medicaid in say to pay, you know, for pay nursing home expenses and just future medical expenses, and they don't want to tap into their assets to do so. And some of the time, the best method is to put your assets into a irrevocable trust, so it doesn't get counted towards your total net worth, and so you can qualify for these government assistance. One important note is to keep in mind is that revocable trust, those assets are still exposed to nursing homes. What that means is those assets still belong to you. So that if when it's time to pay the bills, they can still draw from your assets of your revocable trust. But if you have your assets in an irrevocable trust, those aren't technically your assets anymore. Those are the trust's assets. So that's why people this is part of their planning when they get to that age. They put a lot of their assets into an irrevocable trust. A con in this method is because for example, you try to be too clever, you put too much of your assets into an irrevocable trust, but then you actually need those assets for whatever purpose, just say for an emergency. Technically, those assets doesn't belong to you anymore, so you can't get it back unless the beneficiaries agree to give it back to you. But then there could be a case where the beneficiary actually need that money themselves since you gave it to them, and they aren't in a position to give it back to you. And technically, it's their assets now, and it's not yours, so you can't get that back. So that's something to be aware of, right? You don't want to be too clever with your distribution of assets. And Calvin?
Finally, asset protection. Another common use for an irrevocable trust is to provide asset protection for the grantor and their family. This works in the same way that an irrevocable trust can be used to reduce estate taxes, like I mentioned before. By placing the assets into an irrevocable trust, the grantor gives up complete control and access to the trust assets. They therefore can't be reached by the grantor's creditors because the grantor no longer owns them, but the grantor can name their family as beneficiaries, so they can still be providing for them. The assets are just outside of the reach of creditors. So basically, protect from debtors. They can't, get your money. They can't have a way to get your assets or your money because it technically doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the trust. For example, if you're driving down the road and you got into a very severe accident, that is your fault, and your car insurance doesn't have the car liability insurance isn't big enough to cover all the medical expenses, the car expenses, so forth and whatnot. The insurance or the other party can dip into your assets and your money if you don't put it away in the irrevocable trust. So protect your assets, protect your money that you worked hard for by putting into an irrevocable trust.
Oh yeah, thanks for watching this. I hope this video shed some light of what these trusts are and how it could be beneficial to you. I'm sure. I can attest that I learned a lot by researching these two trusts. And there are multiple different kind of trusts. There's like so many different kind of trusts. It depends on what you want to do. But these are kind of the two biggest ones that people normally use. And yeah, and I'm thinking about setting up a trust myself. I don't have that much assets, but I do want to be able to get this burden off my family's mind. If something were to happen to me, I want them to be able to take over my assets, and no infighting, because people who doesn't want a piece of that pie, you know? And and then if you're one of those lucky individuals, you have a lot of assets. You do. I'm sure you probably already have estate planning and have this in the process. But for the ones who are a little bit younger and feel like they don't need it, you never know what you need, right? It's always about being prepared, right? So it's best to just be prepared and just have a plan in place and just look into the trust and see let us know like if this is informative, if this is helpful, and if you know this, we're just trying to help as we grow. We want to help you guys make sound not investments per se, but you know, just it is kind of like some sort of investment, right? Because you're investing in your future by being prepared. So any closing comments, Calvin?
No, I agree with you. So, you know, stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
All right, man. Peace, man.
All right.
Talk to you
Like,
soon.
comment, subscribe.
Yes.